Shalom, this is Rob Vanhoff with Heart of Messiah and Torah Resource Institute. We're looking at this week's ancient manuscript here, and this is a manuscript from Qumran Cave 4. It is a passage from the book of Numbers, from this week's Torah portion, which is Baha'alotekha. The particular passage we're looking at here is Numbers 11, 32, and 33. And there's just a few things I want to point out about this week's manuscript from the Torah portion. Right here is the beginning of verse 32. And in English, it says, "The people rose up all day and all night, and they gathered quail." This is the situation where they're complaining in the wilderness, and God sends a huge amount of quail, which is, we're going to see this word here, haslav. Haslav is the quail. But the beginning of our verse is right here. This is Numbers 11:32. And we're going to see a few differences between this little fragment here and what we see in the Masoretic Torah. I'll just only have this image to see, though, tonight. And we're going to start right here and go this way. And this is the beginning. If you want to follow along in your Bible, if you have Hebrew, it's Vav, Yod, Kuf, and then a Vav, and then a Mem Sofit. So I'm tracing this right here, as you can see. And it's Vav, Yod, Kuf, Vav, Mem. Vayakum, and then the next word here is, Kaf, Vav, Lamed, Kol, and then He, Ayin, and then another Mem Sofit. Vayakum Kol Ha'am, and all the people rose up. Well, if we look at the Masoretic text, we're going to see something a little different. We're going to see Vav Yod Kuf Mem. So this letter right there is extra. And then we're going to see it's going to go right to Ha'am. And so the Masoretic text says Vayakam Ha'am, and the people rose up. What this fragment from Qumran says, Vayakum, it adds this Vav here, but it says, and all the people rose up. And so there's this additional word here, kol, that is used in the Qumran manuscript here. So we have an additional word, kol, and an additional letter. But we still know this is Numbers 11:32, and all the people rose up because of what's in this next line here. And what it says, and I can zoom in. I'll zoom in just a little bit here. I think Facebook, thankfully, has fixed some of their video problems. I'm going to write below. It's Vav, and it looks like 3 Vavs in a row, doesn't it? But it's really, I'm going to write it in more block letter, Vav, Yod, Vav, and then Aleph with it's a little bit broken. There's a Samik, there's a Pei, and then a final Vav. And then we have the Et here, Aleph Tav, and then we have a rather large Hey, a Shin, a Lamed, and then a Vav. So this is from the same verse. It's the second part of the verse where it says, and they gathered the quail. And they gathered the quail. So this from here to here is, if I vocalize it according to this Qumran text, it's Vayosefu et Haslav, and they gathered the quail. But the Masoretic text, which I'll write above, does not have this extra Vav. It's just Vav, Yod, Aleph, Samik, Pei, Vav, like that. Everything else is the same. Et Ha Slav, which is the quail. So just like with that we saw before, this manuscript adds letters. So what I'm going to do is this letter is added, this letter is added, and this word is added. So you wonder, I mean, if we scan, kind of zoom back and look at the manuscript as a whole, how, what was the quality of this manuscript? Sadly, it's highly damaged, as we can see. We're only a little bit, only enough information to see that it is in fact from Numbers 11, but we don't have the whole, we don't have a bunch of pieces here that we can put together and stitch together a larger section of this chapter. But I'm going to now zoom in here to this bit right here. This is the beginning of verse 33. And verse 33 begins, in Hebrew, it's Habasar Odenu Ben Shinehem. And the flesh was still between their teeth. Because this is when the plague comes forth from the Lord. The meat yet in their teeth, that is from the quail. And so I'll put a note here. This is Numbers 11:33, starts here. And it's, I'll erase that here, and I'm going to trace over. So we have a hey, a bet, a shin, and a resh. And then we have an ayin, a vav, a dalet, a nun, and a vav. So I'll trace it over it, but I'll do it separate so you can see them together here. With block letters, it's just hey, bet, sin. It's a sheen, but it's a sin because it's habasar, resh, ayin, vav, dalet, nun, yod. And then we have a little bit of a bet, yod, here. And that's from the word bain, which means between. So that's kind of broken off. We can't see it. But this is, the meat was yet, odenu. That should be a vav right there. The meat was still between. That's what we have here. So we know this certainly is from this passage in Numbers. And this spelling here is exactly like we find in the Masoretic text. But we've seen enough here with this earlier verse, with Numbers 11:32, with added letters and added words. It doesn't change a lot of the meaning. It just says, and all the people, here in the Qumran text, and all the people rose up, rather than the people rose up. So it's not a huge difference in content. In terms of letters, if we just look at the formation of letters, the Lamed is really unique. Here's one right here we can zoom in on. Is this bloop, 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 like that? I wonder, did he make the short stroke like this and then this last one? Whatever the case is, you see the ink kind of gets big there at the end. There's another one over here. Here's another one. So once your eye gets used to it, you can see all these lameds. They stick out, that neck sticks way out so you can see it. Another letter here we see a few of is the shin. So here's a shin right here. Here's another one. Now, of course, this one is pronounced sin, because it's habasar, the word for meat. It's the S sound rather than a sh sound, but it's the same letter. This text is dated to the Herodian period, which it could be late 1st century BC, or it could be early 1st century. But this actual manuscript probably existed in Yeshua's day. Here's the word et right here, the direct object marker for saying when they gathered the quail. And we can see the aleph, it looks like they probably have this, probably have a stroke Oops, let's see here. Something like that. So 1, 2, 3. It looks kind of like a 3-stroke aleph. 1, 2, 3, like that. The tav is still an older kind of tav. Today we learn a tav like this. But this tav is like that. It's still recognizable as a tav. And of course, we had this other hay here. So the hays that we learned today, again, it's something like this, where the little lower left leg does not touch. It doesn't go all the way up. Well, 2,000 years ago, the hay did touch. And here's one down here. Here's one right here. Right over here. So this is the letter hey, which we would write like that today. And of course, we do have the Sophite letters. Here's a nice Mem Sophite. It goes way over, down, and up. And it's differentiated from a middle Mem, which is like this. Here's 2 in a row for Hamam It. So this word is the least gathered from the end of 1132. And then here's the last letter to look at. Here is a tet right here. We would write that kind of simplified today, something like that. So again, this is an example of a Dead Sea Scroll fragment that we can study because we have nice high-res infrared images available to us on the Dead Sea Scrolls website. And it allows us to compare and contrast this particular manuscript with what we know from the Masoretic tradition. And we can see that there's some variance. And compared to other manuscripts we've looked at, this might be written a little sloppier. The style is not as uniform. Maybe that it wasn't as prepared. And so it might not have been as trained a scribe. We don't know, was this a practice scroll? Was this scroll used liturgically? Sadly, that we don't have answers to all these kind of questions that we'd like. But we can see that there are textual variants from what we have in the Masoretic tradition, but nothing that changes the meaning of the text at all. I mean, we saw the example of, and all the people rose up, it says here for 1132, whereas the Masoretic tradition is just, and the people rose up. So things like that happen from time to time, where we see a variation in text, and we can look to other aspects of that to see, what might account for that differentiation. Are they adding a letter for spelling, for vocalization? Did the scribe's eye skip? Because in fact, with the word all or kol here, the Masoretic tradition does agree that there's a word kol here. So maybe he looked ahead and accidentally wrote it twice. We don't know. But we do see the addition of letters also. Aside from the word kol here, we see the addition of this letter, this vav. We see the vav in kol and the vav in sofu, and they gathered. And these are all additional letters. But they don't affect the meaning. That's an important thing. I hope this is fun for you as we continue to go week by week looking at the Torah portion from the perspective of fragments available from the Dead Sea Scroll manuscript library. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. I hope you all have a restful Shabbat.